My sister, 25-year-old female, we'll call her Delilah, was best friends with my now fiance, 25-year-old male, we'll call him Alan, early on in high school. About 7 years later, Alan, now my fiance, and I got together. Ever since then, my sister has been very strange about him. To understand, you'll need some backstory. It's kind of a lot, so you can skip ahead to keep it brief, but you might be a bit confused. Early on in high school, Delilah and Alan were close friends. However, Alan had a big crush on Delilah, but Delilah made it very clear she was not interested. She slept around with quite a few people and was basically dating a new guy every week. He soon got over his crush and moved on to new people. One day, Delilah and Alan went to a party and they started playing Truth or Dare, as teenagers do, and the group dared them to make out. Alan was actually into another girl at the party and had no interest in making out with Delilah, but Delilah basically forced it on him. This would be the only physical thing they did together. Fast forward to 2017, right after their graduation. They had a short span of time where they would visit a new intimacy shop about once a month for around 4 months when they were both single. But not long after, Delilah started an on and off relationship with a married, sort of in a separation guy. We'll call him Chuck. Delilah wanted to surprise Chuck with lingerie for Valentine's Day and had just gotten back together with him a couple of days prior. Alan was with her while she was trying on the lingerie at her apartment. However, she couldn't get it on and walked out into the room where Alan was, completely naked, and had him help her put the lingerie on. But again, nothing physical happened between them. In 2019, I met Alan for the first time, and over the next 2 years, I would meet him several times and we always had a sort of connection. But he was dating someone at the time. However, their relationship was not much of a relationship. She was basically using him just for his money and often refused anything physical with him. He just hadn't worked up the nerve to break up with her yet. But neither of us even mentioned having a crush since he was with someone else. That's when my sister randomly steps in after I hadn't even seen or talked to him in months. She asks me if I had a crush on him and starts setting us up. Not long after, before anything happened between us, he finally broke up with his girlfriend. We got together soon after. Now that you know their history, and this will be much more important later on, there are a few very odd situations that occurred while Alan and I have been dating. Around the time we got together, my sister apparently told him out of nowhere that she actually liked him back in high school. Just didn't want it to hurt her status. And she was in a very serious relationship with Chuck at this time. Yes, he finally got divorced. Then she described her perfect guy to me and Alan, and it was a spot-on description of him. And her now husband, Chuck, is the exact opposite. Alan is scrawny and more submissive. Chuck is more of a macho guy and way bigger. Very different. In this description, she even said, "I like guys I can throw around, scrawny, like Alan." Literally using him in her description. She would constantly complain that he never hung out with her alone anymore. Even though he hadn't done that in the last 3 years, his ex-girlfriend wouldn't let him because she always thought my sister had a thing for him. But at this point, it was also his choice. He didn't care to be around her, as she was always a toxic friend. When she had her first kid, about 3 years ago, she was going through postpartum very badly. During that process, she was very knowingly and hurtfully unfaithful to Chuck. He chose to stick through it with her and get her into therapy, and they've been working on things since. She seems to have really turned things around. For the first time, my sister and I actually have a really good and mutual relationship with each other. That is, until a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, Alan and I were spending time with Delilah and her husband Chuck, right before Delilah was due to have her second child. Chuck and Alan left to get food, and that's when my sister began to tell me about how close she and Alan were. She mentioned that apparently he had sent her a pic when they were in high school and would visit intimacy shops once a month. She even tried to describe what his weenie looked like. Then she proceeds to tell me in specific details how he helped her put on lingerie, but that it wasn't weird, they were just that close. I knew about the make-out session and the visiting intimacy shops, but not about the lingerie, nor about the picture. I chose to confront her about when she told him she was into him in high school, but that she didn't want it to hurt her status. She then tells me it wasn't about hurting her status, but more that she knew she could be happy with Alan, but wasn't ready to settle down. She didn't want to hurt him by being with other people, but she knew she could be happy with him and that they could make a relationship last. Now Alan admitted to helping her put on lingerie, but says it wasn't memorable, and he didn't remember it until I just mentioned it. But he fully denies ever sending her any pictures. Now she's had her second kid, and I'm worried she might target Alan this time around if she starts to be unfaithful again in her postpartum depression. She's also still being weird. I told her I was coming to visit the new baby tomorrow, and she asks if Alan is coming. When I said no, she sounded very, very sad. When I asked why she was sad, she just said she didn't know if I was coming to see her before he went to work, and changed the subject. Should I confront her about any of this? The baby is only 2 weeks old, and I'm sure her hormones are still high. I highly doubt now is the right time, but how long should I wait? Should I even confront her at all? Should I be direct in my confrontation, or is it better to be subtle and try to get her to admit she has feelings for him? I also don't want to say anything to Chuck until I know more. The whole thing is just so weird. She hasn't fully come on to him or tried anything physical, but the things she's saying are not normal, and it's like she's trying to cause problems. I need advice on how to handle this. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. If you're not able to have a potentially difficult conversation with your fiancé now, your marriage isn't likely to last. You've got to put on your big girl pants. Sit down with A and tell him what your sister has been telling you, instead of assuming the worst about him and letting potential issues fester. Communication and trust are two very important things that make marriage work, and this post shows you're shaky on both fronts. Deal with those issues before you get married and end up hurting each other. Comment 2. Distance is your best solution, whether you confront her or not. This woman is definitely planning to sabotage your marriage with A, and a confrontation will eventually be necessary. Your partner's support is important, and any boundaries would land better coming from him. Telling her, "This is disrespectful to my fiancé," and refusing to engage with her will go a long way. He shouldn't entertain any alone time with this person or communicate outside of essential family situations that include you. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, it's been a week since I last posted about the situation with my sister Delilah, my fiancé Alan, and the weird vibes I've been getting. I've got an update for you all, and let me tell you, it's been quite the eventful week. So after I posted last time, I decided to have a chat with Alan about everything. We talked about Delilah's behavior and how it was making us both uncomfortable. Alan reassured me that he had no interest in Delilah and that he was fully committed to our relationship. He even suggested that we set some boundaries with her to avoid any further awkwardness. The next day, I went to visit Delilah and the new baby. Alan didn't come with me because he had work, and honestly, I was relieved. I wanted to have some sister time without any weirdness. The visit started off normal, with us cooing over the baby and catching up. But then, Delilah started talking about the past again. She brought up the time when they were in high school, and how she used to be the life of the party. She reminisced about how she and Alan would go to those intimacy shops, laughing about how adventurous they were. I just nodded along, not wanting to stir the pot while holding her newborn. But then, she dropped a bombshell. She confessed that she had kissed Alan at that party years ago, not because of the dare, but because she wanted to. She said she had always been curious about what it would be like to be with him, even though she was dating Chuck at the time. I was shocked, to say the least. I couldn't believe she was admitting this now, after all these years. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened as she continued. She told me that she had always felt a connection with Alan, but she was too scared to act on it because she didn't want to ruin their friendship. She said she regretted not giving him a chance back then. I was starting to feel really uncomfortable with the conversation, but I didn't want to leave on a bad note. So, I changed the subject and we talked about her plans for the baby and how Chuck was doing as a new dad again. A few days later, Alan and I were at home when Delilah called. She was crying and said she needed to talk to Alan. I handed him the phone and I could hear her sobbing on the other end. She was apologizing for something, but I couldn't make out what it was. Alan was trying to calm her down, telling her it was okay and that they could talk about it later. After he hung up, he told me that Delilah had confessed to having feelings for him. She said she was sorry for making things awkward and that she didn't want to come between us. But Alan reassured her that he was in love with me and that nothing would change that. I was floored. I couldn't believe that Delilah had actually admitted her feelings for Alan. But at the same time, I was relieved that Alan had handled it so well and that he was so committed to our relationship. The next day, Delilah called me to apologize. She said she was sorry for everything and that she didn't want to cause any more trouble. She promised to back off and give us space. I accepted her apology, but I told her that we needed to set some boundaries going forward. Since then, things have been a lot calmer. Delilah has been keeping her distance, and Alan and I have been focusing on our relationship. We're planning our wedding, and we're both excited for our future together. Girlfriend convinces me to buy a house near my work with my brother, then moves into a condo her mom bought. Now she's begging me for a loan from my bonus. Hello everyone. I am a 26-year-old man who has been together with my girlfriend, Jane, who is 28 years old, for over 3 years. I am currently facing a financial situation that has me a bit conflicted. Around a year into the relationship, Jane and her mother encouraged me to purchase a house. They recommended that it should be near my workplace so I could build equity instead of renting and minimize my commute. Given the inflated state of the real estate market, I was unable to purchase it by myself. Jane was also unable and unwilling to put money into a house with me as we hadn't been dating very long. I wouldn't ask someone I have just started dating to make that kind of financial investment. I ended up going 50-50 with my brother, who was in a similar situation as myself, and that is my current living situation. The plan was that if Jane and I ever decided to live together, I would rent out rooms of the house to cover my share of the mortgage. However, I would not sell the house unless my brother also wanted out. A couple of years later, Jane's mother bought a condo to use as an investment property, but Jane decided to move into it instead of renting it out. The condo is in a high cost of living city, and she's struggling to afford it. Even with her mother paying the high condo fees and myself helping with various expenses such as furnishing the condo, weekly gas and groceries, various subscription fees, etc. With my bonus coming up, for the past couple of months, I have been planning and saving for a significant purchase in my life, which I have discussed with Jane. However, she does not like the idea, as she sees it as me flaunting my wealth, whereas she is struggling to pay for the condo. Leading up to recently, she asked me to lend her a larger than normal loan, approximately $3,000, from my upcoming annual bonus to help cover the condo costs for the next couple of months, as her mother is no longer able to afford to contribute. I'm conflicted about this request for a few reasons. 1. Even with the financial assistance, she can't sustain the condo in the long run. 2. She is unwilling to consider relocating, limiting our options for living together, as we currently live about an hour away from one another. She has asked if I would move in with her there, but it would be a significant increase in distance from my work and would be shrinking my living space down significantly from a male 3-bedroom house to a male 1-bedroom studio. 3. I'm unsure about her ability to repay the substantial sum given her current financial situation. It is becoming difficult to finance both of our situations and does not leave me any room to pursue things I enjoy, as it would be detrimental to our relationship. She won't rent out a new place with roommates because she says she needs her own space. She won't move in with me because she doesn't want to share a house with my brother, because then it's not just her, so our space. She won't move back in with her mother because they don't get along too well. And she doesn't want to rent a place with me closer to my place of work or between our workplaces, because then it is further from her job. While I believe in supporting each other in a relationship, this request feels like a substantial financial commitment on top of what I am already paying monthly for myself and for her. There have also been other loans I have given her to purchase some luxury items that she is priced out of that I haven't and most likely won't receive compensation for, even though she promises to repay me for them. I'm just not sure what to do or how to proceed with this. Edited the list formatting. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Do not lend her the money. Stop lending her money because it is clear that she can't pay you back and is way over her head financially. It is not your responsibility to rescue your girlfriend from her continuing to make bad financial decisions. Please reconsider this relationship, OP. Comment 2. Well, she thinks you're her ATM, so if that's what you're happy with continuing to do, then do what she says. Otherwise, do the sensible thing and say no, and then run away from her outrageous, selfish entitlement. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, so it's been 3 days since I posted about my financial dilemma with my girlfriend Jane, and a lot has happened. I've been reading through all your comments and advice, and I decided to have a serious talk with Jane about our situation. I was nervous, but I knew it was necessary. First off, let me give you a bit of background on Jane and me. We met at a mutual friend's party and hit it off right away. She's always been fiercely independent, which I admired. She's the type of person who, once she sets her mind on something, she goes for it, no matter what. That's how she ended up in her current job, which she loves despite the long hours and the commute. Now, back to the update. I sat down with Jane and laid everything out on the table. I told her about my concerns with lending her the money and how it might not be a sustainable solution for her condo situation. I also brought up the fact that I was feeling stretched thin, trying to support both of us while also maintaining my own financial goals. To my surprise, Jane had been doing some thinking of her own. She admitted that she was struggling more than she let on, and that her pride had been getting in the way of making practical decisions. She confessed that the stress of the condo was weighing on her, and she didn't want to burden me with her financial issues. Here's where things got interesting. Jane proposed a compromise that neither of us had considered before. She suggested that she could sublet her condo for a higher rent than what she was paying and move in with me temporarily. This way, she could save some money and we could still have our own space, as my brother often travels for work and isn't home much. I was taken aback by her suggestion. It was a complete 180 from her previous stance on living situations. But the more we talked about it, the more it made sense. We crunched the numbers, and it turned out that subletting her condo could cover her expenses and even leave her with a little extra each month. The next day, Jane started looking for potential subletters. She found a couple who were interested in a short-term lease because they were renovating their own home. They were willing to pay a premium for the convenience, which was perfect for Jane's situation. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. When Jane's mother found out about the plan, she was furious. She had bought the condo as an investment and wasn't happy about the idea of strangers living there. Jane and her mother had a huge argument, which ended with Jane standing her ground and insisting that this was the best decision for her financial health. The couple moved in 2 days ago, and Jane has been staying with me since. It's been an adjustment for both of us, sharing my space with her full time, but it's also brought us closer. We've had to navigate each other's habits and routines, but it's been a good test of our relationship. As for the $3,000 loan, Jane decided against it. She said that with the money from subletting, she wouldn't need the loan after all. She's even started to pay back some of the smaller loans I gave her for those luxury items she bought a while back. It's not a permanent solution, but it's a start. Jane is already talking about finding a more affordable place of her own once the sublet is up. Or maybe we'll be in a better position to consider buying a place together. Who knows? Husband works full-time while I'm stuck with the kids. Oh boy, I get my revenge on him. My husband, 38-year-old male, and I, 33-year-old female, have been married for 9 years now, and we have 2 children. I currently work part-time and am the primary caregiver for my children, whereas my husband is full-time and is the main breadwinner for our family. He's in a high position and extremely busy, but because of his job, we can afford many luxuries. To address the title, I was fortunate to have such amazing parents. Both my mother and father were very involved in my upbringing, and growing up, I was such a brat to them. However, looking back, I feel so blessed to have them. For the sake of the post, I'm focusing on my father, but do let it be known that I try to be just half of what my mother was. She's the type of mother I strive to be for my children. My main concern is that since my husband is working all the time and provides for us, he should be given some leeway regarding his parenting duties, which has impacted his relationship with our children. He works 6 days a week, and honestly, it feels like our children don't care for him, and it hurts me to my core. Even though both my parents worked, my father was incredibly attentive and involved. He and my mother gave their 100% to parenting me. My father loved to read, and he often had a book in his hand, but whenever I would come to him, he would put his book down, and his focus would instantly be on me. My husband is a workaholic. One time I was next to him, and he was replying to an email, and my oldest wanted to show him a painting she drew in school. He just passed her over to me and said, "Show Mummy, I'm busy right now." I respect that he works hard, but this was at 7 p.m. He couldn't have just taken 5 seconds to look up and give our child some attention. This is just one example, but it honestly feels like he doesn't know anything about our children. He doesn't know who their teacher is, their closest friends are, their favorite color of the month, and their current favorite bedtime story. He's missed sports competitions and school events and either has meetings or important clients anytime there's a school event. He was too busy to turn up to their school play in December. My kids didn't even bother to ask him to come. They're so young, they shouldn't be aware of this already. I try to be there as much as I can for my children to compensate, but I'm not Superwoman, and it doesn't feel enough. One of my fondest memories of my father is when I was 16. I had an exam and was so stressed I was up all night studying. My father wanted me to sleep, but he knew I wouldn't listen to him, so he stayed up most of the night and checked up on me, brought me water, and cut up some fruits as snacks to eat. Later on in the night, I found him asleep on his chair. I was so lucky to have a father like mine, and my heart breaks that my children aren't experiencing the type of parental love from their dad. I have begged my husband to work less so he can be more present, but he refuses and tries to bring up the fact that his job pays for their school, our house, and our current lifestyle. I have repeatedly told him I'm fine with sacrificing a lot of things. We can live in a smaller house, smaller cars, etc., but he has worked so hard to be where he is and is not ready to give that up. Money comes and goes, but my children will only be young once, and I know their father's indifference will affect them as they grow older. And I'm at a loss now, and I don't know what to do. I feel resentful towards my husband and angry at my younger self. I feel like a failure, and that it's my fault my children have to live like this. If I hadn't been so eager to marry, maybe I would have seen the signs and picked a better father for them. Divorce doesn't seem like an option because even though he's not present, I know his family would make him ask for 50-50 custody. At least being together means I can make sure I'm always with my children. Divorce seems even more harmful to them. I've come here to ask for advice and see if I can do anything to help my children. Thank you. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your father sounds like a great dad. You were really blessed. However, not all kids have that, myself included. My parents divorced when I was 5 and my brothers were even younger. I can literally count on one hand how many times I saw him alive. My wife, on the other hand, had both parents. Her father worked 3 jobs to support them. She was very close to him all his life. It's not the amount of time that your husband spends with the kids, it's finding time for them when he can. He's not your father. Please don't compare them. What I would suggest is this. Sit down with him and suggest certain hours of the day are family time. Cell phones off, no work at home, just the 2 of you and the kids. It doesn't have to be a lot of time as long as the kids know it's their time. If your husband has hobbies he likes, see if there are ways to get your kids involved. Breaking up the family will not solve anything. In fact, it will probably be the death knell for your husband's relationship with his kids. It will literally do the opposite of what you want. Comment 2. My mom was the workaholic one, not my dad, but he very much enabled it. As a result, my sister and I are more or less estranged from them as adults. We might get together on holidays, and we have brief phone calls occasionally. But that's it. The only upside is that my sister and I are very close because the only affection we had growing up was with each other. We also struggle romantically, each in our own ways, because that unconditional familial love was not demonstrated to us growing up. We were provided for very well financially, but were lacking in more important things. These are all the consequences your husband will likely have to face as he grows older if he doesn't change. The signs are already showing. Now for the update. Hey everyone, it's been 3 days since my last post, and wow, a lot has happened. I never expected things to escalate the way they did, but here we are. I'll try to give you all the details while also filling in some gaps about our past that might help you understand the situation better. First off, let me tell you about the confrontation that happened the night after I posted. My husband came home late, as usual, and I decided it was time to have another heart-to-heart about his involvement with the kids. I reminded him of the time when he first held our daughter, how he had tears in his eyes and promised to be the best dad ever. It was a moment I thought would define our family's future, but it seems like a distant memory now. I told him how our daughter had recently won a spelling bee, and he didn't even know about it. His face, usually so composed, actually showed a flicker of surprise, and for a second, I thought I had reached him. But then he got a text, glanced at his phone, and the moment was gone. He mumbled something about a big project at work and how this wasn't a good time. I felt my heart crack a little more. The next day, things took an unexpected turn. I was at the park with the kids when I ran into an old friend of ours, Mark. Mark and my husband used to work together before Mark decided to leave the corporate world and focus on his family. He asked how my husband was, and I couldn't help but spill everything. Mark was shocked, and he told me something that left me stunned. My husband had been offered a position with fewer hours and more flexibility a year ago, but he turned it down without telling me. I felt betrayed. All this time, I thought my husband had no choice, that his job demanded all these hours. But he had an option, a way to be there for us, and he chose not to take it. I couldn't believe it. I was so angry, I confronted him as soon as he got home. The argument was intense. He admitted to turning down the job offer, saying he didn't want to step back in his career. I couldn't understand how his career could be more important than his own children. I reminded him of how my father, despite his busy job, always made time for me, how he would leave work early to attend my soccer games, or how he'd help me with my homework every night. I told him, that's the kind of father I wanted for our kids. In the heat of the moment, my husband confessed something that left me speechless. He said he felt like he couldn't connect with the kids, that he didn't know how to be the father I wanted him to be. He was scared of failing them, so he buried himself in work where he felt competent. It was a jaw-dropping moment, seeing this vulnerable side of him I never knew existed. But the heartbreak didn't end there. The next day, our oldest came to me, asking why Daddy was always so busy. I tried to explain that his job was important, but she just looked at me with those big, sad eyes and said, "But aren't I important too?" It was a punch to the gut. I hugged her tight, not knowing what to say. I've been reflecting on our past, on how we used to be before the kids and the big job. We'd go on spontaneous trips, laugh together, and dream about the future. My husband was different then, more carefree and present. I miss that man, and I think our kids would have loved him. Now I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I've suggested counseling, but my husband is hesitant. He's worried about the time commitment. Ironic, right? But I'm not giving up. I want my kids to have the father they deserve, and I want my husband to realize what he's missing before it's too late. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.